Hello, everyone, and welcome to an Element of Express series by Sonalis Cubo. And here I am, Vayjayanti Pugalia, the founder of Sonalis Cubo. Welcome you today to this very, very special session, and which is all about my favorite topic, which is entrepreneurship. And yes, who will be joining me today is someone very special and very dear to me. And I will soon be sharing more details about her. But yes, before we begin today's element, I would want to share a little note on what I feel about entrepreneurship. Because for me, I think entrepreneurship is all about new businesses. It is about how we mobilize people, we incubate ideas, the innovation is practiced, and the fundamental of a society is basically drawn. The society is drawn, the resources are used, and that is what entrepreneurship is all about. And a good entrepreneur is someone who is very willing to invest emotionally and financially into his subject and is calculated in taking the market risk, and at the same time is aware of where the number of jobs he is creating, or very simply speaking, a difference of thought that he or she is trying to bring in. But today's special session is because today we'll be talking about entrepreneurship not in general, but we'll be talking about entrepreneurship in developing countries, the mindset which is required by early entrepreneurs. Why is it important in the developing countries? Country where probably there is a transition of the economic growth, there is low economic growth, where there is poverty alleviation, where there is social and economical standards which are in a turmoil, where basically, the promises and the outcome that a startup usually would make in a Western influence is not able to have that calculated risk, and so much more that an entrepreneur has to face in a developing world. And today, to talk about all of that, I have my very dear friend, Joanna Hamilton. Hi, Joanna.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to the community. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
So before we speak any further, let me give, you have so much which I can go on talking about you, but yes, in a brief, I would want my viewers to know that Joanna is a global citizen. What makes her a global citizen is because she is born, her roots are traced to St. Kitts and Nevis, but she has grew up in the Virgin Islands. She has had a qualifications done from US, UK, and the Caribbean, and probably she has had a numerable amount of corporate work done in India, in Asia, but right now she is based out of China, Shanghai, right, Joanna?
Yes, yes, Shanghai,
So
Shanghai.
yes, Joanna is joining us all the way from Shanghai. And what more best it can be to have an interaction today with a global citizen as Joanna is. She is the founder of Rare Birds, which is a platform for early stage entrepreneurs in developing world, which is, I think, is incredible, because to teach entrepreneurship is absolutely great, but to target entrepreneurship in developing countries, which has a very, very different meaning and mindset, needs a lot of extra caliber and practice, and that's where Joanna comes in. So yes, Joanna, before we move towards the main segment of today's conversation, which is all about the early mindset of the startups in developing countries, you refer to yourself as a global citizen, definitely, because you start from Nevis down to Virgin Islands to US, UK, and then now in China. So what have you experienced as a global citizen is something I want to know firstly.
Wow, what have I experienced? I feel like we're all global though. We're all global, right? We're all moving, we move around, we have friends all over the world. What have I experienced? People, people. And I've learned that people at the core are the same wherever you go. That's the one thing that I would say that I've
And
learned
people
from
are your
looking.
interaction, because I know Joanna is a people's person. And that's why I connected to you so much when you were in India. So Joanna, tell me one
Yes.
thing. When you have traveled to so many countries. You've got your education from different countries. You have interacted on a corporate level with different countries. What do you think is common between everyone? And what do you think is something very distinctive between the cultures, or between the way of working, or basically human psychology? Because, um, and why, my last segment to this is, you settle down to connect to developing countries after being in the most developing cities, getting your education from the developed world, and then settling down to
Yeah.
connect with the ones which are still developing. So what can you tell us about
Yeah.
that?
Okay. Wow, that's a heavy question. Okay, to
Yes,
begin with,
yes,
I think that, like I said before, at the core, human beings are the same. We all have the same desires, right? We want our children to be educated. We want to have health care, all the basic things. And I think what the difference is, perhaps the culture and how we navigate our lives is informed by those cultures. So I think that's the difference. But the second part of your question was, why am I in the developing world now, or why did I choose to be in the developing world?
yes.
Because I'm from there. That's where I'm from. I'm from that soil. So I think a lot of people like myself who go abroad tend to somehow make their way back to their home or someplace similar to their home. So I think for me, when I left the corporate environment, I just knew that I wanted to do something that benefited people like myself, coming from my background, meaning, not necessarily the Caribbean, but people coming from third world countries, essentially. So that's why I started doing this. And I don't know if we'll call China third world. I think China is many worlds. First, second, third, China is many things. But but yeah, definitely learning a lot from China and being in China as well has taught me that there are a lot of similarities between people here and in other cultures and other countries as well.
Yes, but I think when we're going to talk further about your rare birds, where you are talking about
Yes.
entrepreneurship in developing worlds, you are
Hmm.
exploring a lot of African frontiers. You're
Yes.
exploring a lot of startups in the African world. So yes, that is
Yes.
something which I'm really looking forward to discuss with you. But
Yeah.
yes, in your career that you started working with the corporates, so how was it, and how distinctive was it? And I know that you've changed a lot of shoulders in the corporate world also, because I think you're a person who just likes to experience, the experience. You don't want to like stick to one thing. That's why you are called a global citizen. And I think you're also very globally in your corporate world, where you have hopped on to so many different agendas. So tell me about your
Mhm.
corporate connection, and how did it what did it teach you?
Yeah, I think some people might say I'm confused. I don't know. So thank you for the compliments. But no, okay. The thing about working in the corporate world was that the structures were the same, whether it was in the US or working in the UK. And when I was in the UK, I traveled a bit around Europe working as well. So you have a very defined structure, and you have to operate within that structure and that system. And I knew from early on that I wouldn't be there for the long term. So I stayed in one industry for about 10 to 12 years, which was the construction and real estate industry. But what I did was I moved around in that industry. So I worked in different roles, and I got a lot of different types of experience, yes, but I knew that I would leave because I'm not built for that environment, at least not for the long term. It's not who I am. I always knew that I wanted to do my own thing. And like you said, I move around a lot. So I guess it's just me. I need to be able to, I have ideas, and I need to be able to test my ideas and do the things that I really want to do. So
Yes, because
that's how I ended up where I am
that's
now.
correct, and actually trying to know where Joanna comes from. But as for the viewers to understand the different career options that you've been, probably which has also sort of created a mindset in you to finally rest your working for the developing world. Would you like to
Yeah.
share a few the different work modules that you were engaged in as a corporate career?
Sure. So my first job out of university way back in 2001, oh my gosh, 19 years ago. Wow. I'm old. Okay. I started off as an analyst. I was a real estate analyst, and then I became a portfolio manager, so managing real estate assets. Then I went to university in the UK, And because my background wasn't actually in business and real estate, it was in science and international relations. But as it goes, I got a job working in that field. And, it paid well. You're young, you get into the corporate world, they pay you, you get caught up in that world, right? So then I moved to the UK, and I got degrees in investment and the management side of running construction projects. So when I got there, I shifted more to the development side of projects. So actually developing commercial buildings and working with institutional investors. So it was more of a hands-on shift, going from just the investment number crunching side over to the actual hands-on development of buildings and working with contractors and developers and funders. And it was quite an exciting world,
So
exciting time.
this world that you were in with so many diversified characters to play in
Yeah,
the
it was fun. It
yeah,
was fun. It had its challenges, obviously, because it was male dominated and there were a lot of issues around that.
right.
But it was fun working on these massive projects. Like I got an opportunity to work on London Olympics and these massive commercial properties
And
around
do
the
you think
world.
that has sort of framed your mindset to work for startups in developing world because you have seen so much of positive response in the Western world that you want the same to be delivered in the developing world. You want these resources to be explored by the developing world. That's the reason probably your inclination of transferring all the uh, the gains around here there because at the end of the day your mindset probably is also drawn from somewhere that you have invested, as you say, so many years in it.
Yeah, I think you know what it is. I left my tiny little island when I was 18, and most of us, not all, but many of us do leave, right? And we leave and we go abroad for a multitude of reasons. It's a small place, we're looking for opportunities, opportunities are limited. There's a lot of brain drain in the Caribbean. So I think a part of me just felt like I wanted to make sure that there were more opportunities for people to not necessarily have to leave, you know, because so many of us do. And as I traveled
That's
and
why
I
I'm
moved
including
around
you
the
here,
world,
Joanna. But previously, also, you said that you come from a place where entrepreneurship is seriously required, and now again, you're talking about a place where you did not want people to leave, but to work in the local land and create
build.
more opportunities. Yeah. So for me to also understand in very few lines, can you tell us a bit about your place, Virgin Islands? Is it so? So if you,
Virgin Islands. Okay, yes. So my parents are from St. Kitts and Nevis, but they migrated to the Virgin Islands. So I grew up in St. Croix. St.
right,
Croix is 84 square miles. It is absolutely stunning. It's gorgeous. The people are lovely, but it's tiny. Right? It's quite, it can be very provincial, everybody kind of knows everybody. It's quite
right,
tight knit. So
right.
imagine
We
me being
have
in
such
a place
places
that
in India too, so it's okay.
I wanted to go. Right. But yeah, it's a lovely place. I mean, it's like any other island in the Caribbean. Life kind of tends to revolve around your family, your religious organizations. It's quite tight knit. I guess like India, in that way, but just a very small version. Obviously the cultural makeup is a little bit different. We have a lot of Indians in the Caribbean that came
Okay.
that came over historically. But yeah, that's the Virgin Islands. Very pretty. We have been going through some economic downturns, and that we've never really picked up from. So that's a shame, but that's not just in the Virgin Islands, that's throughout the entire Caribbean. So one of the things I recognized a while ago was that entrepreneurship has the potential to develop not just the Caribbean but different parts of the world, outside of government and NGOs and nonprofits and so on and so forth. So that goes back to your question that you asked before, which
Right.
is why I wanted to give back to sort of where I was from. I felt that entrepreneurship was, you have to kind of pick that one thing that you like and put your all into it. You can't heal the world, so to speak. So that was my one thing that I selected, and I felt like this is what I wanted to do. But also because when I was leaving the corporate world, I found it difficult to find a network for persons like myself. So I just decided to create one, and
That's
it kind of started
awesome.
from there.
That's awesome. I've
Yeah.
always known you since I know you as a person who's so giving and loving, and
Oh,
who likes to volumize the gratitude. So it's no big deal if you're saying it, because you are such a person. So coming back to the main platform that I know you of, which is Rare Birds, and I know it from the time that it was called Secret Birds, and
secret
now,
birds. Oh
yes,
gosh.
and yes, and now it is Rare Birds, which basically works towards early stage entrepreneurs in developing world. So, what can you tell us about Rare Birds and about the
Mm.
platform? What kind of is it? Just African startups which are connecting to it? Do you have what is the mindset behind Rare Birds?
Okay, so Rare Birds, which was first Secret Birds, okay, that's the idea that I started on in 2015. So I've been at it now for 5 years and it's definitely evolved. Rare Birds is a platform for early stage entrepreneurs from the developing world, not just Africa. I mean, the African continent has been a focus. I'll tell you why, but it's not just for the African continent. Because as you know, I have a lot of Indian women on the platform. I've got women from Eastern Europe, all over the developing world, a few from China, certain parts of Southeast Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, and those who are also from sort of the North or the West that are interested in that part of the world as well. And what I do is I celebrate, and the next stage is the investment part, which is what I'm working on now. Those early stage entrepreneurs from these countries. So bringing them to the platform, celebrating them through the podcast and through the magazine and the various interviews. And what I'm doing now is integrating a financial tool which will allow them to receive funding from their diaspora networks abroad. So let's say I know India has a very good diaspora network. Let's say you are in Kolkata and you're building a startup and you want to receive funding, you have the opportunity to come to the platform and gain funding from someone in the Indian diaspora who may be in New York or New Zealand or Australia, who is specifically interested in investing in early stage startups in Kolkata. So
Right.
that's the next stage. But Africa has been a focus on the platform recently because
Yes, because
there are a lot.
recently I've seen many African startups on Rare Birds.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I did a collaboration recently
Right.
with Heather, and we focused on Africa. We called it New Frontiers of Africa Tech, where we focused on 7 to 8 interviewees who are building e-commerce platforms. So I do a lot of different sort of this year with the podcast. I've been doing a lot of collaborations and talking to lots of different kind of people. So that's what we're doing now. The African continent has is predicted to have the largest group of young people in the world in 10 years. So there are a lot of young people on the continent with big ideas, right? just like in India
Like in
and
India.
in Indonesia. I mean, the developing world generally is where you have all of these young people with these
Because the
big,
need
amazing
to
ideas.
create is there now, the need to give better,
Solving
and the
problems.
need to create and cater to the issues is something which everyone is putting their head
Exactly.
to. So tell me one thing, Joanna, if are you like planning to even have a series on Indian startups? Because I think that's going to be so awesome.
It's in the works.
Yes, because
So, I
the
mean,
way,
when I started podcasting in 2017, I think majority of my guests were from India.
I was
Remember?
one of them.
You Yeah, so one of the things I want to do is focus on South Asian startups. So, Bangladesh, Pakistan. I interviewed someone from Pakistan recently, Nepal. Yeah,
You
why
must
not
find
Sri Lanka?
focus the way you just focused on the African series. You should focus on the Indian series, because in my country,
Yeah,
sorry, I'm being biased, but in my country
no,
too,
no,
you would
it's
have
great. I'd
many
love
young
to.
children and young entrepreneurs who would be wanting to be
Absolutely,
celebrated on your platform. And
for
so
sure.
soon, I really hope, Joanna, you connect to the startups even in my country, because even they are looking
I
out
would
for a
love to.
global platform. And yes,
Yes,
and in order to understand the entire financial tool, the guidance that you're going to be giving them on your next upcoming tools in Rare Birds is going to be fantastic, because I think just
Yeah.
to have an entrepreneurial mindset is not enough. The proper guidance through it is very, very important. And that is what
Yeah.
Rare Birds is all about. And yes, and would you like to just, viewers, I would want to say that you can see the Rare Birds as a website if you just Google it up, or even on Instagram.
Rarebirdshq.com. I also am in some really interesting conversations with some women from and some men from Russia, Ukraine, Poland, to feature startups from there as well. So I'm very open to featuring startups from all over the so-called developing world,
So anyone
global.
hearing and would like to connect with Joanna, please reach out to Rare Birds, because I'm sure the way she likes celebrating entrepreneurs and talking about their startups, and if she finds your work enterprising, she will definitely cover you up. And now bringing to
For
the
sure.
next question to you, Joanna. While you were in your
Yes.
corporate career, whenever you had your time, I've also known through your bio that you worked a lot towards social entrepreneurship, where you have
Yes.
talked about Caribbean food and culture, where you have reached out to HIV positives and worked for them. So, would you like to talk about social entrepreneurship and how important it is for each person to indulge in? Because I'm a social entrepreneur, and when someone engages in such activities, it's very important for me to understand why social entrepreneurship is important. So, what can you say
Right.
about social entrepreneurship?
Back then it was called nonprofit work, right? It wasn't a social
Right.
entrepreneurship. That title wasn't called that yet. So essentially I was bored. Well, not bored with my work. My work was keeping me busy, but I guess there was like an emptiness. I wanted to do, I guess, meaningful work. I was working in property, crunching numbers all day, dealing with lots of different interesting characters. And I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I started volunteering for a lot of these nonprofits because, as you know, they tend to be cash strapped. So a lot of working professionals would volunteer with them in the evenings. And then from there, it developed into sort of consultancy, and that spread across a range of different organizations. It was fun, it was interesting, but I learned that the nonprofit business model is not sustainable. And then with time, the social entrepreneurship developed, which I think is a much better modeled and one that I really believe in. And I think that, yeah, I think developing conscious businesses that are actually profitable but solving social problems is what we need, is the direction we should be going in and what we need to be doing. And they're not a charity. They are profitable, they're generating revenue, but it's just that the at the core of the business, they're solving a big social problem. And I believe in those types of organizations. I mean, Rare Birds obviously isn't just focused on social enterprises, but social enterprises have a big role to play in the developing economies of the world. So absolutely.
That is fantastic. And now coming back to today's topic, which is working on the mindset of
Mm,
the early stage entrepreneurs in developing world. It's
yes.
very important to understand the difference between that. We are just not talking about entrepreneurship, we're talking about the mindset of an
Yes.
entrepreneurial person. So what do you think, Joanna? And I think when you're talking about developing world, even India falls into that space. So it is very
Yeah, yeah.
important to understand, as you say, the mindset. So, what, according to you, is the mindset here?
Okay. So I will begin by saying this is the book, very interesting book. It's called Mindset, and it's written by Carol Dweck. So I got introduced to this book a while ago, and this is how I got exposed to the concept of mindset. And the book is based on the premise that, okay, each human being has basic qualities, right? Intelligence, talent, skills, what have you. And they fall into two categories. There's the fixed mindset, which says that this is what you're born with, and that's it. And then there's the growth mindset, which says that those skills can be developed. So that's essentially what the book is about. And it's not based on sort of, positive affirmations, and it's not Pollyannish. It's not about walking around being positive and thinking, oh, I'm going to just, things are going to emerge because I like them. It's actually based on science. So it's based on the science around plasticity, which actually says that at any age, at any different point in our lives, the brain creates these neurons. These neurons in turn create these neural pathways. I'm not a scientist, but I hope you can understand what I'm saying, which alters things, how we think, our experiences. So it is real and it's based on science. And your listeners can research it and really dive deep into it, because it's actually saying that our brain is elastic and our brain can change. So we're not actually set. We can actually change how we think. And I believe this is very, very important for the entrepreneurial process. And I think that far too many times we are very excited about building businesses and starting businesses, but our head isn't always in the right place.
Not in the
And
right
as you know,
place.
I teach entrepreneurship here at a secondary school, and we spend 4 to 6 weeks of the class in the beginning just on this. And my students don't get it until we actually get into the part of building and solving problems. And then they realize, oh, okay, now I understand why we had to spend so much time doing mindset. Because if your mind is not in the right place, your entrepreneurial journey is going to be very, very challenging. So
So,
that's mindset.
so it's like, what are the exercises, the physical thoughts which one needs to basically, if I ask you in pointers, to lay out a few pointers in order to get the correct mindset, what that would be?
I think, like everything else, it starts with your habits. I think you have to develop good habits. I think that those habits then have to be developed into routines. And it's not a routine that is stagnant. It's a routine that has to keep changing, you know. So you're good, you become good, like lifting weights or something, or building your body. Your muscle is developed, but then it gets used to that exercise. You have to then train it in a different way. I think it's also about the people that you surround yourself with. And it's also looking inward. I think a big part of it is looking inward. You have to develop a value system. You have to have some kind of core, and you have to be willing to ask yourself those questions. You know, what is it about me that makes me unique? What is my unfair advantage? What is that one thing that I have that I can take out into the world? Because once you start on this entrepreneurial journey, there's going to be a lot of difficulties. And
Right,
if you don't have that inner strength, and if you don't
right,
have those habits and that resilience,
right.
you're not going to last. And unfortunately, so many really clever, hardworking people don't make it because they're not resilient. You know, someone tells them their idea is rubbish, they get
Right.
offended, they give up.
Right. Yes.
But that's kind of how it is. People are going to say that,
So this
you
is at the
know?
start of the career, where the ideas are rubbish, but then also there is a second stage, which is failure.
Yes.
So how does one deal with failure?
Yeah. The thing about the growth mindset is that it thrives on effort. And it prioritizes learning over achievement. So when you are learning, as you're learning and you are doing, you have to, there's repetition, right? There's practice, and a part of that is failure. So in that process, you are failing as you go along, right? In terms of effort, when you put your effort into something, you're just trying, and a part of trying, you're going to fail. So failing is actually integral to this process, because if you're not failing, you're not learning, you're not growing. So it's a very different mindset to say what we're taught in school. In school, we're taught that we have to study, we have to work hard, we have to get A's. It's the exact opposite of this when you come into the entrepreneurial space. You can't approach building a business like taking an exam. You know, it's not that way. It's a complete opposite mindset. You have to actually expect the failure. You have to be willing to embrace it and actually thrive on it and say, okay, I've learned, next thing, move on, make my iteration, do the next thing. So failure is very important. If you
But I
can't
think it
embrace
is
the
easier,
failure,
Joanna, to accept the failure when it is just probably your hard work and your emotions which get
mm,
in the failure segment. Because if you're financially crushed, and you
mm,
you have to experience failure, then to put back and tie up your laces and walk again becomes difficult. So do you think that, how does a mindset of an entrepreneur then works if, as I say, that a good entrepreneur has to invest financially and emotionally? So emotional failure maybe is easier to gather up and walk back on your shoes, but what
mm,
about financially? I mean, it's a little difficult for me to understand if an early set entrepreneur, a startup,
yeah.
goes through a
Mm-hmm.
failure and experiences a financial loss as well. Uh, then yes, you're right. Either that person can just give up. But then when does and how can that person probably, thrive back? Is there, do you think there is a time limit that one person should give, or some extra effort? I mean, what do you think that person needs to think then?
It depends, because this is very risky business. Nobody nobody tries to become an entrepreneur because they want to be rich. There are many other ways to get rich. Nobody gives up their steady corporate career to become an entrepreneur. I think you have to understand the risk that you're getting in. It's very risky. You have to, I mean, when you're in the early stages of your business, you're taught that you need to be lean. You're taught that when you're building your MVP, it should be low cost. You're taught these things. So any failure that comes along, I think you have to accept it. I mean, it's just a matter of how much of the failure you're going to take on, how much
I
of the
think
risk
now
you're going
I'm
to take
able to
on.
really understand what you're trying to say when you say that a failure should be accepted well. And it is not that we can be so calculative from before that, the failure is not going to walk in. Because, I read a very beautiful line today, which was the difference between an entrepreneur and a businessman is that an entrepreneur is there to create something new. The
Yes,
ideation is
solve
new.
a
So
problem.
anyway, the entrepreneur knows that the risk factor involved here is much much
Yes,
higher than what a businessman's thought process is. So I totally agree when
yes,
you say that the failure should also be taken into accountability, that yes, I might fail, and if I do, then this is my recoup, and it's not that I can stop there. So yes, I think it's a very well thought thing that you put across to us.
but
Yeah, yes,
but
Joanna.
sometimes you have to make that decision. Okay, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this
Right,
isn't right.
right,
Maybe I'm not meant for this. There's that too. But
right,
most of the entrepreneurs that I know are very passionate about the problems that they're solving. So
right.
they're in it for the long run. And they'll tell you, I lost this much money, I lost that much money, I'm never going to get it back. But I
Hmm.
think they've accepted that that's a part of the process. But they are on the path to success as well. So that's
Because
all a
you
part
learn
of it.
from your failures, as you say, and you pick up
And
this.
this is why everybody's not going to be an entrepreneur.
Yes, yes, very, very
So
rightly said. Yeah,
it's very sexy and it's very trendy, but it's not for everyone,
I
because not everyone is going to have this mindset or be willing to take on this mindset or embrace this kind of failure or be resilient. And there's a lot of compromise that you have to make, and there's a lot of sacrifice. So I think sometimes it's portrayed as very sexy and very trendy, but
Yes.
it isn't.
And I
It's
agree
not.
to you, Joanna, because nowadays what started to happen, because it is so sexy and so trendy, most
Hmm.
of the businessmen, especially even the second generations, to
Hmm.
the stalwarts, they think themselves
Yeah.
to be entrepreneurs. They don't realize that they are just following a lineage. They are not entrepreneurs, they are businessmen.
Right.
They're not
Yeah. Yeah.
understanding the difference there. Yes, they like
Mhm.
the word trendiness of entrepreneurship, of being
Yeah.
a trendsetter, but they don't understand that the trend is already set. They are just taking it
Yeah.
forward. Yeah. So now
I
the
get
next,
that.
tell me one thing, Joanna. How far do you think the culture, the environment of one place affects the mindset of an entrepreneur?
Oh gosh, very much so. Because I mean, even using myself as an example, right? I live in China. I'm obviously not Chinese, but I live in China. So my view of the world is going to be through a Chinese lens, right? The way I experience the world is through a Chinese lens. This is going to be very different to someone who is in India or who is in the United States or who is in Nigeria, right? And also all of these experiences that we've had, they make us who we are. So I think that we have to be very cognizant of the stories we have inside of us. They should inform us, but not define us. Because if we allow it to define us, then that mindset, it becomes fixed. You may have had very bad experiences. Maybe you come from a culture where you're a minority. So you've had really bad experiences around that. Fine. You have to try your best to, and I know it's hard, right? But you have to try your best to understand that one experience, but it doesn't mean you're going to have that same exact experience in another part of the world or in another country or with another group of people. So all of these experiences that we have, the environment that we live in, you know, our religion, our background, our family, all of these things affect who we are.
Right.
And we have to be aware of that so that we can train our minds, because sometimes our mind plays a game and we have to train it so that it sort of gets into this habit of, okay, that's not real, that's not a story, that's a lie. Okay. And then think about our parents as well, right? I mean, they tried their best, but not everything that our parents taught us is always good.
Right. Okay.
That's just the way it is.
I
They
hope
tried their best.
I hope your parents are not listening, so it's all right. You can say that,
They
Joanna.
love me. No, but
Okay.
you know what I mean? Our parents tried their best, right? But no parent is perfect. I mean, you're a parent. I'm not a mom, right? But no parent is perfect. We try our best. You're going to cultivate your child in the way you know best. But maybe what your parents taught you was based on their time and their experience. You're in a different time. You're in a different experience. You have to be able to extract some of the things that perhaps aren't so good and change that, because it can be changed, and
Yes, and I think
evolve.
it is so beautifully said when you say that different cultures and when you're operating from different places, like right now you're operating from China, and so your
Yes.
mindset is for the durability of your ideation in China. So definitely, I think it's very beautifully said when you say that, you know, your qualities of your mindset should inform you and not define you, because that is what
Yeah.
is going to be rigid, you know, because I think that is something very beautifully engraved that you've just talked about, the mindset. Because yes, and we definitely want to know what is happening in the Chinese mindset. On a lighter note, Joanna, being in India, yes,
You
true,
know,
yes, that is much on a lighter note.
that's a whole other FB live. But
Yes,
you view the world from where you stand, right? So I'm viewing the world from China right now,
right.
and somebody else is going to have a view of China that's very different to mine because they're outside, but I'm inside.
Right.
So we won't see things in the same way. And that's expected and that's okay. But we just need to be aware of that,
So
because
how far do
it's
you
not
think
right or
we also need to
different.
be? How far do you think we also need to be aware of our inside? Because you know, to look inwards so that we can make the growth outwards. You know, because a lot of
Yeah,
what is happening inside us is reflected outside. So how do the
absolutely.
young entrepreneurs with a mindset, they can go into the turmoil which is happening inside them for the best outputs?
Yeah, and that's, this goes back to what I said earlier when I said I spent 4 to 6 weeks teaching my students, cultivating that knowledge around mindset, because it is about going inward. I think that it's very easy to live outside yourself and constantly be seeking validation from the outside world. And you have to build up, it's like what I said earlier. You have to know what makes you special, and you what you think is a perceived disadvantage is actually an unfair advantage. But you have to be willing to go in to find that and to source that. And a lot of people don't spend the time to do that because we're not taught to. Nobody tells us, look within and find yourself. At least maybe some are fortunate to have that, but many of us didn't have that experience growing up. And also I think most of us are taught to just we seek validation, right? We want to be liked, we want to be loved. We're constantly seeking for people to tell us that we're good at things. But when you look inward and you find that sense of self, you're not particularly interested whether someone likes or doesn't like in the terms of business your idea. It's okay, because you're focused, because you don't want to get too caught up on all of the applause, because that can quickly change and nothing is perfect. But at the same time, you don't want to let the negative stuff deter you from your path. But that only comes from that inward looking
So,
reflection,
so
if you
very,
will.
in order to just concise the whole subject that we talked about,
Mm,
the early mindset. So, if I go back to what we just discussed, that is to embrace the failures and not stop,
sure.
and to look at the project from a place from where you're operating. So, because environment, as you say, is a very important role that plays in incubating the idea and giving it a shape, the culture, the
Right.
environment. And then again, you spoke about that it is not good to be rigid, and that so if I ask you to wrap up in few steps as to what you would like to give in form of a tips to early entrepreneurs in developing world, including my country, what would they be?
Oh gosh. Okay. I don't like to give advice. I
All
don't give
right.
advice,
So don't
but
give
but
advice.
I would.
Please give it like a curriculum because you teach entrepreneurship. So yes,
But
give it like a
I
curriculum.
will
I
share.
think that's going to be better.
I think the greatest lesson that I've learned from my own entrepreneurial journey and my own growth just as a woman, as a human being, is to I have stopped asking for a lighter load, and instead I've focused on developing a stronger back. That is the lesson I've learned, because each of us has a cross to bear, right? So you look to the left is this way, right? You look to the left and you think, oh, she has it good, he has it better than me. These people have their own cross to bear. It's just different to yours. You look to the right, there's going to be somebody else over there who's looking at you and they think that you have it better than them. So you need to put your blinders on, you need to stay focused, and rather than trying to constantly, oh, why me? Why isn't it working? I wish it could be. Just build yourself up. That's the idea of the strong back. Build yourself up from the inside. Focus on your craft. Focus on being good at what you do, and just make learning and evolving your thing.
Be
And
passionate
that's
about
it. And be passionate about it. And that's what I have learned from my
that
experience.
is very, very rightly said, Joanna, because I think what I picked up best from the start of our conversation was a person like you who's a global citizen, who's been all around places, but is choosing to give back. And the reason why so much of African startups are being shown on Rare Birds, which is your platform, which is dealing with the mindset of young entrepreneurs, is basically because you know that these entrepreneurs, you want them to start generating jobs, start generating ideas, as I
Yes.
always, yeah, like as the new trend in India now is to reach out to local and voice the local, and be vocal about local is the mantra which is happening in India too. And because that is what is going to be generating jobs. And I think one very important way of putting it together by the government and the private sector is by
Mm.
creating funds and have these local listings on websites where people can look up these local trendsetters. There has to be a good networking among the startups where
Yes.
each can benefit from each other than the one
Yes, absolutely.
because I think networking between the startups where one can help the other is something which is very important when it comes to
Yes.
developing countries, and we can hit more the local targets there, because I think
Yes.
entrepreneurship is something which generates easiness in the community where things can be made much more swifter with the newer ideas. The businessmen are good, but the entrepreneurs, as you say, are sexy and trendy with the new
The
ideas.
young people.
The young people.
And we have to remember that countries like yours, like India, the African continent, these are countries that have the majority of their population are under 25,
Yes,
particularly in
yes,
the African continent.
right.
Around West Asia, the Middle East, you don't want to have these places where there's all these young people, so much potential, and they're jobless
That's right.
and they're hopeless. This
That,
is this leads to, as we know, loads of other economic and political disasters.
that's right.
So I think because it's a culture that I'm familiar with, it's just what I've chosen to do. So I guess I'm doing my little part.
No, I think it is fabulous, Joanna. You're giving back to your community. You're teaching the new
And
lineup.
make some money along the way. Make some money
Yes,
along the way too.
yes, definitely. And yes, viewers, I would want you to know if you want to understand as to what more Joanna is doing with the startups, with the things that she's lined up in the form of rare bird tools. And soon that she's promised she'll be even getting the Indian young generation startups to be having
Yes.
and being celebrated on her podium. Please visit Rare Birds HQ on, you can Google it up and you can see it on Instagram. And Joanna is all there to connect to you, and
Yes.
yes, and you will be able to hear
You can
so
find
many.
me on social media. I'm always on socials.
Yes,
So you
she's
can find
always on socials. And what is more important is to hear the journeys of the different entrepreneurs that Joanna has
absolutely.
collaborated with by celebrating them. People from Africa, people from Russia, from different continents. Because as Joanna very rightly said, that the culture, the environment really hits upon the mindset of young entrepreneurs, which sets you on a journey of growth and abundance. So thank you, Joanna, for being on today's show. And I
Thank
hope
you.
more and more people, they listen to these podcasts and your interviews on rare birds and pick up tips and tricks about forming a very strong mindset to build an awesome career. You are doing a fantastic job by being a global
Thank
citizen,
you.
but giving back to your native rooted place, which is Virgin Islands. And I'm so, so proud of you. And yes,
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to have Heather next, with whom you have
Yay!
collaborated from Dot Connector.
Yeah,
So looking forward to
from
have
China.
Lee again from Shanghai, China, to be joining me in my next conversation. And Joanna, my love, thank you so much for being with me. And before you go,
Thank
I
you
would
for
really,
having me.
I mean, before
Thank you
you
for
go,
having me. And I want to commend your work as well. The series is fantastic. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for showcasing all of us what we're doing, men and women, during these interesting times.
definitely.
You're doing great work as well. We're all proud of you. We're all fantastic. We're all fantastically excited about what you're doing. We
Thank you
can't wait to
so
see.
much, my love. I've learned
Keep
so much
up the
from
great
you
work.
today. And yes, I would always remember that whichever country we are in, we should let our thoughts to just inform us and not make us rigid, because that is
Yeah.
something which I'm taking back from today's conversation, which is so,
Thank
so
you.
beautiful, that the ideas should always be in the form of metamorphosis. They should not be
Definitely.
stagnant. Yes. So thank you, Joanne.
COVID has taught us this too, right? COVID-19 has taught us this lesson as well.
Yes. So
Things are always changing.
before we wrap up, Joanna, just tell me in few lines, what has COVID taught you?
Wow. What has COVID not taught
Especially
me?
being in
I
China,
think,
what has it taught you?
and I experienced it in China. I think the one thing I wouldn't say it's taught me, but it's reinforced that I need to constantly be adaptation, adapt or die, literally. As extreme as that sounds,
Yeah,
because the virus came, and as you know, we were on very extreme severe lockdown here in China,
right.
and there was many lessons to be learned in that, how quickly things can change, how quickly things can go downhill, the management of a disaster like this in a country like this. And even now, the way at my school, the way we're teaching, we constantly have to be adapting and growing and changing. I had a lot of friends and colleagues say to me, they just want things to go back to being normal. There is no normal. And this has taught us that there's no normal, and that we have to be willing to just always be moving like that, and that we're connected. I mean, this is the one time in the world where we were all experiencing the same thing,
Yeah.
and this virus didn't discriminate against anybody.
And
It's
look at the bright side of it. I mean, I'm sorry I'm saying that, Joanna, but so much of entrepreneurship has developed in this COVID times. Every day
problems to be
in the social
solved.
media, yeah, there's so many problem
Yes.
saving devices which are coming up, and I mean, it is absolutely amazing to see so many startups coming up, which is catering to the needs of the COVID times.
Yeah, because many of these countries had already had existing problems. So COVID has only exacerbated and amplified what was already there. And it's showing us that we have a lot of problems to solve. So let's encourage and support the entrepreneurs to be the
Definitely.
problem solvers,
Thank
and
you. Thank you,
assist
Joanna. We
assist
must encourage.
apart the entire ecosystem.
Yes, and we
Yes.
must be globally connected. And this COVID has just done that for all of us. So thank you, Joanna.
Yes.
And look to some more fabulous podcasts and amazing celebration of startups
Thank
on Rare
you.
Birds. And looking forward to, talking to you and meeting you soon when you're in India. So
In
yes,
India. Can't
yes,
wait. Back to
yes,
Mother India again.
yes.
Yes. To see all my
So
friends.
I send you my best wishes and my best of luck. And I'll see you very
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you. All my
Thank you,
love.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you to
you
your
so much for
community.
being
And
with
I
me
hope
today.
I was able to add some value this evening.
Definitely, because you have
Okay.
indeed, because it has made me read up so many articles on entrepreneurship in developing countries. Till now, it was all
Great.
about entrepreneurship for me, but now I look at it from a very, very different angle. So thank you so
Yeah.
very much, Joanna. And viewers, thank
Okay.
you for being with me today in an Element of Express series by Sonalis Cubo. And I'll be looking forward in my next session where I'll be in conversation with Heather Lee, which is absolutely an amazing personality, again hailing from Shanghai, China, a connect which
Yes.
is Joanna knows very well. So thank you, Joanna, for putting up Heather with me. And yes,
My pleasure.
very soon we'll be meeting up again. And have a good night, Joanna. See you soon.
And you. Namaste.
Namaste, my love. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.